Welcome to my channel Limelight Leaks. Please share and subscribe and hit the bell icon for new updates. We had played in bands together for a couple of years and helped get me in. For many years, he kept quiet. Don Felder was the man who played the most famous guitar solo in rock music. But inside the Eagles, he was treated like he didn't belong. Now, at 77, Felder has nothing left to hide. No band friendships to worry about, no reputation to fix. He's done staying quiet. The story he's about to tell shows what was really behind the shiny album covers and big stadium concerts, to show a hard truth, being stabbed in the back, being controlled, and having his music ideas crushed. You think you know the Eagles? Think again. This is what really happened behind Hotel California. And it all started in Malibu with a 12-string guitar and a simple recording that would change rock music forever. The guitar player who changed everything. In 1974, Don Felder joined the Eagles, and almost right away, their special sound changed completely. Up to that point, the Eagles were known for their soft singing together, gentle acoustic sounds, and relaxed country rock love songs. Songs like Take It Easy and Peaceful Easy Feeling had brought them money and fame, but they hadn't yet crossed over into the kind of loud arena-controlling sound that would come to define them in the years ahead. Felder changed that. He brought with him a powerful mix of blues, rock, and southern toughness, along with years of skill that few in the band could match. He didn't just add guitar, he added power. Felder's arrival brought a new musical way of playing to the Eagles, layered harmonized solos, hard progressions, detailed counterpoints, and a harder-edged tone that pushed their songs from mellow to huge. His guitar work added weight and bite to their recordings, and suddenly the Eagles weren't just a band, they were a sound force. He blended perfectly into their harmony-heavy sound but gave it backbone and bite. Felder wasn't a backup player. He became an important piece of the creative engine driving their growth. His most legendary contribution came in 1976 with Hotel California. The song started as a simple instrumental recording, recorded on a 12-string guitar in Felder's Malibu home. But what it became, thanks in large part to his famous guitar solo, was a cultural landmark. That solo, mixing melody with haunting precision, became one of the most celebrated and recognizable in rock history. It didn't just complete the song, it gave it its soul. The music soared, layered with emotion and defiance, a perfect reflection of the song's eerie mystery. To millions often, that solo wasn't just a moment, it was the moment. A defining pillar of the Eagles' identity. Felder's playing lifted them from popular to immortal. It was the turning point. The band had never sounded more powerful, more complete. But while fans loved his sound, the power games inside the band were beginning to shift. The silent war behind the scenes. The Eagles may have sung about harmony, but inside the band, there was anything but. Behind the curtain of perfect live shows, platinum records, and Grammy wins lay a power structure defined not by working together, but by who was in charge. At the top of that pyramid stood Don Henley and Glenn Frey, the undisputed leaders, calling the shots with an iron grip. They weren't just co-founders of the band, they were its bosses in all but name. Every major decision ran through them, which songs made it onto albums, who sang lead, what the setlist looked like, and most importantly, how the money was split. In public, the Eagles looked like a unified force, but privately, it was clear. Henley and Frey were the brand, and everyone else played supporting roles regardless of talent or contribution. That included Don Felder. Despite his huge influence on the band's growth, he co-wrote Hotel California, delivered the guitar work that fans still worship, and helped bring in the band's harder, more dynamic sound. But in the boardroom, he was barely a voice in the conversation. Time and again, he was left out of financial discussions, dismissed in creative meetings, and made to feel more like a sideman than a full-fledged member. It didn't sit right with him. Felder began to ask questions, reasonable ones. Why did Henley and Frey earn significantly more? Why were decisions made in private and presented as a done deal? Why were the contributions of others, especially in songwriting and musicianship, being so obviously overlooked? But instead of answers, Felder received thinly veiled hostility. His questions were treated not as valid concerns, but as threats. And just like that, the image of Don Felder began to change. Not within the public eye, but inside the band. He wasn't a team player anymore. He was difficult. That label, vague but damaging, began to stick. Management started treating him differently. His input was questioned, his motives doubted, his presence increasingly pushed aside. Worse, the band began painting him as difficult, a label that soon came with consequences. The coldest goodbye. Things reached a boiling point in 1994 during the Hell Freezes Over reunion, an event that was marketed as a fresh start, but quickly exposed the cracks that never healed. After 14 years of silence, the Eagles reunited with massive fanfare. The tour was a global success, and the accompanying live album reminded everyone just how powerful the band could be. On stage, it looked like nothing had changed. Felder was there, right where he belonged, nailing thessalos, blending into the harmonies and delivering the same magic that helped define the band's golden era. Fans saw unity, strength, and nostalgia. But behind the scenes, the old dynamics had returned, more entrenched than ever. Felder was again pushed to the sidelines when it came to decision-making. Despite being a full-time member, he had no meaningful say in the band's business affairs. Henley and Frey retained total control over finances, tour planning, album production, everything. Felder had hoped that the reunion would come with Airset, a chance for shared respect and transparency, but it quickly became clear that nothing had changed. The hierarchy remained untouched. He was expected to perform, not participate. The tension became unbearable, subtle at first, then unmistakable. And then in February 2001 came the blow that stunned Evan Felder. Without warning, without conversation, he received a fax, a cold on-page document stating that he was fired. No call, no meeting, no gratitude. After nearly 3 decades of service, creativity, and sacrifice, he was removed with the push of a button. There were no goodbyes, just an administrative decision executed like a business transaction. For a man who helped define the band's most iconic sound, it was a brutal betrayal. He wasn't let go like a partner. He was discarded like a problem that had lingered too long. Felder had been erased, but instead of vanishing, he did something no one expected: the lawsuit that tore off the mask. Felder responded by doing what few in his position would dare. He stood up and fought back, not with a guitar, but with a lawsuit. In a bold, unapologetic move, he filed legal action against Don Henley and Glenn Frey, accusing them of wrongful termination, breach of fiduciary duty, breach of contract, and an unfair distribution of profits. It was a declaration of war that sent tremors through the music industry. Felder wasn't just suing 2 former bandmates, he was challenging the very machinery of a billion-dollar band that had become a more business than brotherhood. The Eagles had built their image on unity and harmony. Now that image was under a harsh spotlight. The lawsuit cut deep. It revealed not only creative differences, but a toxic imbalance of power. One that many suspected, but few had dared to speak about. Fans were rattled. Could the same group that sang about freedom and innocence really maroon like a corporate empire driven by ego and control? The media erupted. Headlines chronicled every twist and turn, dissecting contracts, royalty splits, and behind-the-scenes dynamics. Suddenly, the Eagles' flawless reputation was unraveling. But for Felder, this wasn't about revenge or retribution. It wasn't a power grab or a plea to get back in the band. He didn't want another tour or another hit record. What he wanted, what he needed, was to set the record straight, to claim his rightful place in the story he helped build. The lawsuit dragged on for years, filled with tension, sealed depositions, and legal maneuvering. Then in 2007, I tended, not with a dramatic trial, but with a quiet settlement behind closed doors. The details were kept confidential. No one would ever know what was paid or what was promised. But the outcome spoke volumes. The damage to the illusion of unity was irreversible, and Felder had made it clear. He wasn't just another ex-band member. He had been a cornerstone of their success, and he wasn't going to be erased quietly. Felder still had more to say, and it chose to say it in the most public way possible. The memoir that told it all. In 2008, Don Felder made the most decisive move, yet in reclaiming history. He published Heaven and Hell, My Life in the Eagles, a memoir that pulled no punches. It wasn't crafted to save face or to dance around uncomfortable truths. It was unfiltered, raw, and unapologetically real. Unlike most rock star memoirs that gloss over internal strife in favor of glamour, Felder's book read like a cathartic release, decades in the making. He exposed the inner workings of a band that to the outside world looked untouchable, but inside it was riddled with manipulation, unchecked egos, and a ruthless power dynamic that crushed collaboration. He detailed the battles over songwriting credits, the exclusion from business meetings, and the growing realization that his creative input, while central to the band's success, meant little when decisions were made. Felder wasn't bitter for the sake of it. His tone was that of a man desperately trying to be heard after years of silence. He wasn't lashing out, he was speaking up. For the first time, fans, We're given an unfiltered view into how one of the most successful rock bands in the world operated more like a corporate boardroom than a brotherhood of musicians. The backlash from the Eagles camp came quickly. Don Henley's legal team pounced, attempting to suppress specific portions of the audiobook and accusing Felder of violating past agreements. But Felder stood his ground. He didn't backtrack or water down his claims. He insisted the book wasn't an act of revenge. It was a matter of historical correction. These weren't cheap shots. These were lived experiences. The memoir wasn't a vendetta. It was a record. But Felder stood firm. And behind his words was something deeper than revenge. Redemption through music. Felder didn't vanish after the fallout. He evolved both as an artist and as a man with a new sense of purpose. In 2012, he merged with Road to Forever, a deeply personal album shaped by everything he'd been through. It wasn't just a musical project. It was an emotional exhale, a reflection of the pain, betrayal, and rediscovery that had defined his post-Eagles life. The songs carried the weight of lived experience, touching on themes of broken trust, healing, and resilience. It was music with a mission, not tailored for radio play, but crafted with raw honesty. Critics and longtime fans recognized its depth, praising the album for its vulnerability and authenticity. But Felder didn't stop there. In 2019, he returned with American Rock and Roll, a vibrant celebration of the genre that made him. With collaborators like Slash, Mick Fleetwood, Sammy Hagar, and Chad Smith, the album wasn't just a personal triumph. It was a public reminder that Felder was still a respected force among rock's elite. These weren't casual cameos. They were endorsements from legends who knew his worth. Then came The Vault, 50 Years of Music in 2025, a project that encapsulated his entire career. But it wasn't a standard retrospective. It was a carefully curated archive of unreleased demos, newly recorded tracks, and inspired collaborations with Steve Lukather, David Paich, and Joseph Williams of Toto. Each song was a time capsule layered with emotion and artistry. This wasn't about revisiting the past. It was about honoring it while still pushing forward. Felder had shed the shadows of his former band and was finally writing his story on his own terms. But during a live show in early 2025, life reminded him just how fragile that journey still was. The collapse that shocked fans. While performing Tequila Sunrise on the Rock Legends Cruise in early 2025, something went terribly wrong. What started as a nostalgic performance quickly turned into a moment of panic. In the middle of the song, with guitar in hand and the spotlight glowing, Don Felder suddenly collapsed on stage. The music stopped. The audience, full of longtime fans and fellow rock veterans, froze in stunned silence. Crew members rushed to his side, and within minutes he was taken to the nearest medical facility. The diagnosis came quickly. Severe dehydration made worse by harsh stage lighting, travel fatigue, and the physical toll of performing night after night. For someone half his age, it would have been exhausting. At 77, it was dangerous. After several days of rest and hydration, Felder released a statement assuring fans he was recovering well and planned to return as soon as possible. But the scare left its mark, not just on Felder, but on those who watched. It was a sobering reminder that time, no matter how strong the spirit, always demands its due. And yet Felder didn't use the moment as a reason to slow down. He didn't cancel shows or make excuses. He returned to the stage with the same quiet determination that had carried him through decades of conflict. Because for Don Felder, the spotlight isn't about reliving past glory. It's about continuing to share something real, honest, and deeply personal. And that purpose became clearer than ever in what he started teaching: legacy without permission. Today, Don Felder doesn't ask for recognition. He earns it through workshops, interviews, and mentoring artists. He teaches not just music, but resilience, what he calls surviving invisible burnout. He's refused to exploit his story for drama, instead choosing to speak only with intention. He's no longer waiting for apologies from Don Henley or for inclusion in official Eagles history. If it's not in the record, he said, it's in the music. And, as he plays the Hotel California solo note for note on smaller stages around the world, he reminds everyone some legacies can't be erased, even if others try.